We're here with Norman Finkelstein.
Hi, how are you guys?
Good.
Thank you.
It's an honor to be here. Why should young people in the U.S. pay attention to Gaza?
The facts are these. Israel, in its creation, ethnically cleansed the indigenous population. It was about 750,000 Palestinian Arabs were expelled. Of those 750,000, 300,000 were expelled to Gaza. Okay? The bottom line is Gaza's overwhelmingly a refugee population or descendants of refugees. Number two, Gaza's overwhelmingly a child population. So if I were to ask Eli, how old are you? He would respond.
22.
And if I were to ask, your name is?
Weston.
Weston, how old are you?
22.
And if I were to ask Dana, how old are you?
25.
And if I were to ask, how old are you?
22.
22. Your name is?
Alden.
Alden. So, believe it or not, half the population of Gaza is younger than all of you. So when you hear about mass famine, half the people are younger than you. If you have kid brothers or sisters, they're the age of your kid brother or sister. And if you look at the history, without going through the details, periodically Israel carried on in 1955, 56, 1970. Periodically, Israel carried out these massacres against the people of Gaza, really quite horrific massacres. And then, beginning in the 1990s, Israel couldn't subjugate these people in Gaza, and they adopted a new strategy. And the strategy basically was to lock them up in a concentration camp and leave them there to just languish and die. In the most literal sense. That is to say, nobody could leave Gaza. I know that sounds like a lot of people are very surprised when I tell them that fact. Because they assume, okay, the conditions are horrible. But what do you mean they can't leave? Well, literally, nobody can leave Gaza. The conservative Prime Minister of Great Britain, David Cameron, he described Gaza as an open-air prison. And then if you allow me to get up, I'll just get here. And then you take one of Israel's leading sociologists, Baruch Kimmerling, and he was at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. Now he wrote this book it was 2002, let me check, 2003. And here's how he describes, very casually, this is how he describes the Gaza Strip. So I'll let one of you read it, Alden, the Strip.
The Strip has become the largest concentration camp ever to exist.
Yes, it was a concentration camp. The people of Gaza, for example, those young men who burst through the gate on October 7th, they were born in a concentration camp. It's a life with no past, no present, and no future. Because by October 7th, 2023, Gaza was being forgotten. They tried nonviolence in 2018. They tried nonviolence, was called the Great March of Return. I'll just read it from the South African brief. So the South African presentation before the International Court of Justice included some background. And they say, and I'm quoting from them, 214 people in Gaza, including 46 children, were killed during the Great March of Return, a large-scale peaceful protest along the separation fence between Gaza and Israel, in which thousands of Palestinians participated every Friday for over 18 months, demanding that the blockade imposed on Gaza be lifted. One particularly lethal day alone, Israel killed 60 Palestinians. As determined, there was a commission that went to investigate what happened. During those weekly demonstrations, the commission said the Israeli security forces killed and gravely injured civilians who were neither participating directly in hostilities nor posing an imminent threat to life. Among those they shot, they targeted. You read it in the reports. Remember, this was to quote the South African submission, a large-scale peaceful protest. They targeted children. They targeted paramedics. They targeted journalists. And they targeted persons with disabilities, namely young people in wheelchairs or on crutches. And then it says, those killed by Israeli soldiers firing from behind the separation fence include 3 medics and 2 journalists. A total of over 36,000 Palestinians, including nearly 8,800 children, were injured by Israel, including, listen, 4,903 people who were shot in the lower limbs, namely the Israeli snipers were targeting the knee and below to inflict life-changing injuries. In other words, to paralyze them for life. Many while standing hundreds of meters away from the snipers, unarmed. They would be 300 meters away. They would be leaning against a tree, and the sniper would take careful aim from the kneecap down to paralyze them for life. 156 of them had to have at least one limb amputated, and over 1,200 required specialized limb reconstruction treatment. The commission, the investigative commission, found that the maiming was not accidental. The rules of engagement, namely what the snipers were told to do, that's called the rules of engagement. The rules of engagement adopted by Israel permitted snipers to shoot at the legs of the major inciters. One Israeli soldier admitted that he shot, quote, 42 knees in one day. So, why do I mention this? Because people always say, why don't the Palestinians, why don't they have a Gandhi? Why don't they try nonviolence? Well, guess what? They tried nonviolence. They tried it. They tried it in 2018. That's not ancient history. It's 5 years ago. I know, I was chronicling it. And so they had run out of options by October 6th Eve.
What are your thoughts on the connection between the oppression of the U.S. working class by capitalism and the oppression of the Palestinians and now the Houthis by U.S. imperialism?
Gaza has become a metaphor for all the downtrodden people in the world who are pushed around and beaten by this horrible, heartless system. And so I feel like a lot of support from the young people, for the people of Gaza, support here, it comes from a kind of instinctive identification with the underdog, that the same way we, meaning your generation, is being beaten down by the system which refuses to give your generation a future.
So I think we're going to end on a fun note. So,
Fun? Wait, let me
Fun.
let me get my dictionary. How do you spell that?
what music inspires you?
So you'll notice often when I'm speaking on Gaza, I say, of course, there has to be a ceasefire now, but I also say the walls of Gaza concentration camp have to come tumbling down. So when you ask me what inspires me, I took that line from there. The walls must come tumbling down.